Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Mappy Hour. I'm so psyched for another Mappy Hour live tonight. So, just as we get started, I wanted to give a little overview of what Mappy Hour is. If we have some newbies out there, we are a community of urban dwelling outdoor enthusiasts. We believe that everyone can live in the city and love the outdoors, and we're all about finding nature and the outdoors in our backyard. I'm really excited tonight because we have a New York City based team coming on and sharing their journey at the intersection of outdoors and fashion with us, which I think really encompasses the whole Mappy Hour ethos of being able to do both things while being in a city center. Before we get to them, a few things. If you are based in New York City, DC, Chicago, Denver, Seattle, or Northwest Arkansas, head to mappyhour.org and sign up for an event because we have live events in all those cities happening every single month, and they're really fun. So if you are able to join us in person, please do. And then the other thing I wanted to say was thank you to Sierra Nevada. They are supporting this entire maker series that we're doing. We did 12 months of it last year where every month we had a different maker come on. They shared their story. They did a custom product and a giveaway and shared like a behind the scenes with us on Instagram. And it's been really fun and it's awesome to be able to support all these makers, and it wouldn't be possible without our sponsor. So huge thanks to them. They've been supporting us since like 2015. Pretty awesome. And I think that's it for the shout outs. So without further ado, I am so excited to introduce Chelsea and Allison. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
So I'm realizing I didn't really give everyone any intro to who you all are. So before we kick it off, these two are the founders of Hikerkind, which is an apparel brand. But I think you two can probably describe what it is a little bit better. So I will stop talking and give the floor to you to introduce yourselves and your brand.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I am one of the co-founders of Hikerkind. We are a women's outdoor brand and community. And like Sarah said, we're based right here in New York City. And this is Allison. Go
Hi.
ahead.
Hi, I'm Allison. I'm also the co-founder of Hikerkind. And like Chelsea said, Hikerkind is an outdoor brand, but we're also a community. We run a hike club based in New York City for now, from May through October. So look out for the calendar. That's probably going to drop in a few months, and we can't wait to see you on trail.
Perfect. So I think the best place to start is with your origin story. So it'd be great to hear from both of you about your backgrounds, specifically related to fashion and the outdoors, and how that brought you together and culminated in this awesome company that you have. So, Chelsea, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, sure. Allison and I actually both went to the Fashion Institute of Technology here in New York, but we did not know each other. So we started at the same place in the city and ended up meeting 8, maybe 7 or 8 years later. But I studied fashion, merchandising, and management, did not work in that. I interned all throughout college with different stylists. I knew I wanted to work in styling from the second I came to the city. And so that's what I did for 10 years. I worked as a styling assistant. And in turn, that led to me working in production and as an agent for a little bit. So I worked in on a lot of fashion shoots. And so we'd be working on editorials or on ad campaigns or with fashion designers as they prepared for their collection to show at fashion weeks here in New York and London and Paris and Milan. And so I was working in fashion at the kind of advertising ad end of the kind of road, now working on Hikerkind and seeing everything from inception to go to market. I now see where I slotted in my career in the past, and that was like towards making the beautiful imagery that you see and fall in love with. And that is where I met Allison. And I actually met Allison at a really interesting and important time in my life. It was where I was trying to figure out what my next move was after being a styling assistant for 7-8 years or something like that. And wasn't really sure I wanted to stick around in that exact path. And so I was looking to what brought me joy and made me feel happy and peaceful and productive and confident. And I found that in the outdoors. And it was not something that I grew up doing. I did not have a really outdoorsy typical family or whatever that means. I didn't camp or hike or ski or anything. And so I started to kind of just chase that feeling and get on the Metro North and hike myself. And that's when I met Allison, someone who was also interested in the outdoors. And so I instantly, became attracted to her as more than just a friend on set, but as a friend after hours.
So like Chelsea said, I also went to FIT. I studied a version of textile design, and I also did nothing with that. I went into styling right after I graduated. I worked at a few different magazines, and then I worked assisting different stylists. And like Chelsea said, the trajectory of a stylist assistant is you either kind of take that next step to become a stylist yourself, or you find a different path. And I was dabbling in it, but Chelsea and I had already met at this point, and we had this conversation because we became friends, like Chelsea said, because we both love the outdoors. I grew up in a family where every family vacation was either hiking or skiing somewhere. So it was just part of my DNA. I always did it and I always loved it. And you don't really find other people in fashion specifically that do. So it's really exciting when you find somebody who can share that love for the outdoors. And so Chelsea and I kind of talked about this idea. It really came to be because we were working, I think, on like a Loewe shoot. And we were discussing, Chelsea had just come back from the Colorado Trail. And she was talking about the clothes she was wearing and how she was really frustrated because like either people would comment on the fact that she was wearing like All and Wander, which is a very expensive brand, and that she tailored it to her own body, or they were just
which is crazy. We can admit it's a little crazy.
I want to get into that in a second, but I didn't want to interrupt. What?
Yeah.
Well, I did it because I wanted to control, like you can't control anything when you're going outdoors. All you can control is what's on your back. And for me, as a new hiker, I wanted to go into this journey or onto this trail with as much confidence as I could bring myself. And it was like armor. It was like something to put on. And so I wanted to feel confident and comfortable. And so for me, that was shopping this like obscure Japanese brand at Westerland and in the men's department and making it fit me because it was like all I could grasp onto because there were no other options.
Yeah. So like coming from a background in fashion, I think the last thing we probably would have done was go into REI and buy some random, I don't know, Columbia or Smartwool, just because that was what was being offered to us. Like there was a lot more intention behind how dressing even on the trail. And so Chelsea and I on set kind of got to talking about the fact that we had these, I don't know, it's the aesthetic that just wasn't aligning with what was being offered. Even the clothes that she ended up wearing, as much as she tried to make them her own, like it was still menswear, it was still all black, and that just doesn't really capture the like type of person she feels to be and how I feel to be, like this authentic version of ourselves. And we always say that like the most authentic versions of ourselves comes out on trail, and so we wanted to have something on our exterior that reflected the interior. So that was kind of what was the first conversation that led to our beginning Hikerkind.
I love that. I feel like there's this whole other conversation too about what people are wearing on trail and how that does interact with the culture of the trail.
Yeah.
I hiked the John Muir Trail last summer and I wore hiking boots with ankle support, which I guess is like very uncool.
I actually have a funny story because I was going to Cornwall to hike with my family and I hadn't bought new hiking boots in a while. And I remember I was going to REI to buy some hiking boots and Chelsea's like, don't get hiking boots that have ankle support. Like only the non-real hikers.
Yeah, it was like an okay boomer moment.
No, and I would just like to say, I think to each their own, like
course,
whatever
yeah.
makes you feel the best version of yourself. But I
But
think
I
they're like
appreciated the advice.
what Sarah, I think you're getting at is that there's this archetype and there's this
Yeah.
preconceived notion of what a hiker is and what they should look like.
Yeah.
And that is when we're talking about shoes, it's like the cover of the Wild book, right? It's that brown leather, red lace shoe. And so I was just letting Allison know that she didn't have to buy that if she didn't find it comfortable.
And also she said like they're much lighter weight. There's no break-in time because she knew I was buying something new and I was literally leaving like the next week. So it was also partly that. So
It was
I
like
appreciated the
communication
advice.
around like where she was going and what she was going to be doing. She wasn't backpacking. She wasn't carrying a lot of weight. And so and that's like why, that's exactly, I think what we were getting at is kind of like this idea.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because I'm sure you guys have come up against this a bit of people being like, it doesn't matter what you wear on the trail, like whatever. And like at least in my experience, these were like very hardcore hikers where what I was wearing was somehow affecting them, or they had a judgment on it. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like exactly what you're saying. Like if ultimately we should just be able to wear what we want to wear, what we have money for, what we're comfortable in, or whatever it is. And even within like the more traditional or like old school hiking community, there's still like expectations around what people are wearing. So that was all.
I think one of the phrases that, or what do we call it? Whatever. One of the lingos that I learned on that first through hike was obviously HYOH, which is hike your own hike. And while it's often, for some reason, unfortunately said in kind of like a passive aggressive way, I like really like to hold it and own it as like a very positive message, which is just, you do you. Like, don't pass judgment on others. You do what you want to do. Like, it's not affecting you. And
as
so
long as you're being respectful to one
message.
another and the land that you're hiking on, that's all that matters.
Totally.
Yeah, I love that.
HYOH was one of our brand names that we were considering in the way beginning.
Yeah, that was like good.
I know, but it seemed like a battle. Like we were like, let's think a little more outside the box.
Yeah.
So I do want to get back to how Hikerkind started, but I feel like right now might be a good time to talk about the brand, just because of this conversation that we're having. So we're going to fast forward a little bit, but we'll go back to the origin story in a second. And why does Hikerkind look like it does? How did you come up with the designs, and what are you trying to help people feel and share about themselves in your clothing?
So when we first started Hikerkind, we kind of went back to our roots of styling, and we started looking for reference images, because every photo shoot we would do, we would always pull references from old magazines, books, art history, whatever, anything that inspired us. And that's kind of how we started pulling references for what we were going to build with Hikerkind. And we found this one woman, and it was this woman from like the 1930s. She just looked so like confident, and what she was what Chelsea and I wanted to be wearing. And so that was the catalyst to just start looking at that era of fashion. And so through looking at that, and specifically looking at people outdoors in that time, we just both noticed that they looked like they were wearing their regular clothes. They looked like they were wearing clothing that made them feel like themselves. And so we just didn't see that type of clothing on the market. And that was really what we were pursuing. We wanted clothing that felt effortless and timeless, and that didn't have to fit into the stereotype that Chelsea was just mentioning about this. Like when you think of an archetype of a hiker in your head, there's this like idea of what it looks like. And we wanted to break that mold because we both didn't feel that it was necessary. Like you can still have performing technical clothing that doesn't have 15 pockets on the legs, or doesn't have, I don't know, a boob pocket or something. You can still have clothing that performs well without all of these ideas of what hiking clothes should look like.
I think on top of that, there was also a really strong desire to build clothing that made women feel powerful. And that's how we thought these women looked when we pulled these references. And we're, of course, like we're looking at a photo and we're creating this whole narrative behind it, which is part of the creative kind of journey, and is like evolved into these personas of who we're building for the brand. But it was really just confidence and power. It was, these women to us looked like they were dressing for themselves, and that we found that there was like great power in that. And of course that means different things to different people. But for us, it meant designing gear that helped us regain that power and made us feel like our most confident versions. And whether that be as simple as a color palette change, or a front length being a bit shorter, or a sleeve not being dropped, or it's just these, or like an arch onto the sleeve where it feels like a bit less expected and a bit unconventional, but feels like the woman wearing it is like wearing it for herself and no one else.
It's really cool. And I have no idea how things are designed in the outdoor world, but my assumption would be that designers at like XYZ traditional outdoor brand go in and think about it as like, how will this perform only? And I, at least in my experience in the industry, have never heard anyone from a brand, be it marketing or designer, talk about the clothing being designed in a way that makes someone feel powerful. So that's really beautiful. Love it.
Well,
yeah.
At the end of the day, we're always trying to solve like one problem or many problems. And so our gear always has to like perform and look good. And the top tier problem that we're solving is like, how does someone feel when they're in it?
Yeah. So let's rewind slightly. So you guys meet each other on set. You're like, this one is cool because she hikes and also lives in New York City. And what happened? How do you go from that to having this successful brand? What's the in between there?
There was a little thing called the pandemic. That was really the catalyst that gave us, well, we didn't give us time. We had time. We all had time. But I was slotted to go hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So I had sublet my apartment. I had like told everyone I was leaving. I made that grand statement, which was also like so that I felt responsible and that I actually had to go. But that's where I was going. Like I was supposed to go in March. So we can, that was like the same time. And so I definitely had nothing to do because I had like told everyone I was out of here. And Allison was still working in styling and in creative direction, and everything really slowed down for us and for the industry. And so she approached me and said, do you remember that idea that we kind of always batted around? Do you want to take it more seriously? And so we had a Zoom, I had like a FaceTime where we just talked about.
No, I think it was like the first time we saw each other in person.
Oh, did we?
Because I was like, we need to have this conversation in person, and you didn't necessarily know what it was about. And you're like, okay. And so like I sat you down and I was like, do you want to start this with me?
I mean, I remember it being just a lot of energy. Like I just remember us talking really like just allowing ourselves to think really, really big and irrational, if I'm being honest. Like we were just kind of like, what do we want to, like, if we could just do this, what would we want to build and what would we want to do? And so it's interesting because here we are 2 years later, and the goal is exactly the same as it was in that first conversation. We've just learned like an insane amount along the way. And so it started with us just saying, let's just do it. We obviously then, we created a questionnaire, which felt like the right thing to do, obviously. Wanted to make sure that we weren't just screaming into our own echo chamber. And so we sent it out to anyone I'd met in Colorado on my hike, they sent it out to people. And then we were just DMing random hikers because our network was actually quite small here in New York. And that was another problem that Allison and I had, was that it felt like we couldn't connect with others like us. And we knew that they were out there. And so we sent out this questionnaire and asked, specifically about their gear. And to your point, we'd always were asking about how it made them feel and how they wanted to feel and what colors did they want and what was the number one piece they wanted changed. And then more about like their communities, like where do they hike and who do they hike with and questions like that. And overwhelmingly, all of the women we spoke to agreed that they were not satisfied. And the most interesting thing was that they were not satisfied with what they were wearing. They weren't motivated to buy. And I think that was a good sign for us that they would probably buy something if they had the option. And on top of that, a lot of them expressed how they felt alone in this feeling, like that they too, like they were surprised that we were asking them these types of questions and that they felt like alone, like that this was a problem that they thought they just had to deal with because there was no option. And from the answers on that questionnaire, we started to build Hikerkind. And by that, we started with the mid-layer that we're both wearing, which is the first piece we launched with. We wanted to pick a piece of gear that we thought had the most room for innovation, especially within our own closets, within our own packs. And in addition to the mid-layer, we wanted to start a hike club here in New York. We wanted to just be the friends who always want to go for a hike. There's no question if we're going to be there. And we did all the planning for you. And that was really how it started. And, it had other names, which we broke up with, and it had a lot of branding, or, it had a lot of boards of imagery. There was a lot of fabric headers. There was a lot of decisions that we made really quickly. So we had the idea and brought this product to market in 6 months, which is really, really fast. But we felt like design, as we saw it, is best to perfect in market and innovate and create iterations on while gaining the feedback from people who are using it now and not, in 2 years or in 3 years. And also we just really wanted to get out there. We were really excited, like super, super excited, because for Allison and I, it was like the first time in our entire careers that we felt this was it. This was right. Like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so when you feel like that, we just, cried a lot and worked really hard.
That's like a good summary of what it's like to start a business.
I mean, I'm sure can relate like a million times. It's
you just cry a lot and work really hard.
That's literally it. Yeah.
I just gonna like put a little like kind of cheesy note here, because I know like a lot of people are getting laid off right now in the world, and I don't have the article right in front of me, but I was reading something about how innovation thrives during recessions, especially. And I think, you guys starting during COVID is similar kind of experience, where you might have chosen to leave your jobs, but you had this extra time to be creative and to work on something that you were passionate about. And so I do think that like sometimes these moments are really scary and hard, but the outcome can be really beautiful and incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, the scariest moments are always the most rewarding. And there's not a day with building Hikerkind that's not completely scary and completely feels every day something new, and we figure something out and we learn something. And that for Allison and I is really rewarding. So that's why we keep going.
Awesome.
Also because we know that what we're doing is resonating and people are excited and there's this clear need and want for what we're building. So that's also what keeps us going.
Yeah, and that's what we learned in we call it beta, but technically year 1 with the mid-layer and the club. And like Allison said, at first it was to prove that Allison and I could like actually do this. And then it was to just make sure that what we were doing was resonating and of value. We never wanted to just create or push our ideas out into the world if, they were not, going to be what people need, and they weren't going to solve a problem, and they were just, to create sake. That's not what we wanted to do. So the first year was a lot of trying to just listen.
Mm-hmm. And how has the response been, either or both, from customers and also if there has been one from the industry? Share that with us.
So I'll speak first to the industry, which has been really interesting because coming from fashion, it's a very different world. It's very competitive and cutthroat, and the triangle at the top, the tier at the top, is very protective of their role. And we have the exact opposite with entering into the outdoor industry. Since we started this, everybody has been so welcoming and excited for us and like propping us up and introducing us to this person and that person, and so excited about what we're doing and can't wait to like help you in this way and that way. And it's just been such a refreshing experience, like actually talking to people who align with your values, align with your morals, and understand that we're all working towards the same goal. So why not all work together? So on like a personal level, that's how the industry's been responding to us. But then also we've been so like lucky that our first year, Polar Tech gave us the Apex Design Award, which is for design and innovation in the space. And then we received from outside, we were voted as 2022 Best Fleece. And then also Gear Patrol put us on their GP 100. So for best products, our trouser system. So the industry's been really receptive and excited about what we're doing. And so it's just, again, telling us that what we're doing is something that is of value.
Yeah. And overall, the customer response has been really incredible. There are definitely things that we're working on. And as a full-time team of 2, things are gonna be, slower than we wish, like especially when we talk about extended sizing and, really streamlining our responsibility for our product from creation to end of life, and looking at what that responsibility holds and how we can best navigate it. And so there are avenues that we're always going to be working on improving. But some of the best responses have been when women try our gear on and they don't take it off. They're like, this is mine now, and I'm leaving the store or I'm leaving your office with it on. And I've never, all our years of Allison and I, how many people we've seen put clothes on in styling? Like that was our job. We're like, hi, nice to meet you. Take your clothes off, put these on. Like that's what we did. Literally. That was what we did. We dressed people. And in all of those years, I've never seen the way women react to putting on, especially like our trousers and our shorts. Because they're pieces that are so difficult for women to feel confident and fit in often. And they put them on, and some women's entire faces and demeanors change, and the way they stand and the way they hold and when they look at themselves in the mirror, it's like incredible. And it's just like, it's so powerful, and it's so exciting.
That's awesome. It's so great to hear. And you guys didn't mention it, but there was a Vogue shout out too that I'm just gonna put out there.
Yeah, we've had great press, which is
shout out to Ella for listening to our story and being engaged and writing about us in Vogue, which honestly is just like the craziest thing. Like
it feels full circle for us, because like I don't even know how many types of different Vogues, like all around the world, different Vogues that we've worked on, and then to be featured in the actual on Vogue is just full circle for us. It was definitely one of our number one goals for the season. Was we felt like last season we definitely got a lot of reception from the outdoor industry, but we also wanted to get kind of that like stamp of approval from the fashion industry, and that felt really good.
Yeah. So we did a map hour together a few weeks ago, and one of the participants asked a really interesting question that I wanted to bring to our virtual audience as well. And that is, can you bring us through the process of going from design to an actual physical piece? Where do you get these materials from? Are you guys sewing it yourselves? Like, what's going on here?
It's a wild, wild ride.
Yeah, bring us on a wild ride. Let's go.
So like we've kind of already covered, obviously it comes from idea inception. Then I took it upon myself to draw a very remedial drawing, and Chelsea always makes fun of me because they're teeny tiny. We brought that to a pattern maker that we found in the garment district. That was through a lot of Google searching and going on the CFDA website and just calling everybody we found contacts for and asking them if they'd talk to us.
Yeah. And so a pattern maker makes the blueprint essentially for your garment. And before we continue, I also just want to point out that Allison and I, if you missed it, we didn't study design. We didn't work in design. So this is like how two women decided they wanted to make a product, made a product, just like for the record. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got the pattern maker who makes the blueprint, basically.
So I think I missed a step. We also had, we knew we were making a mid layer. We knew we wanted to make it a fleece. We wanted to work with a heritage mill. And so Polar Tech was our first thought because they're the ones that invented fleece with Patagonia back in the 70s. And so we reached out. Luckily, Outdoor Retailer was online at that time, so we could talk to whoever we wanted. And we reached out to the Polar Tech rep. They responded to us. Luckily, they sent us a ton of different headers based on what kind of material we were looking for.
And headers are like little samples of the material that the mill has in their collection. And so you have like a little piece like the size of this notebook, and it has all the stats on it, like what is it made out of, how much does it weigh, is it, Blue Sign certified? There's like all that kind of the quick and dirty facts on it.
Yeah. So from all of the samples that they sent us, we landed on Polar Tech Power Air, which is what we actually ended up going with. And our reasoning behind that was because of the sustainability efforts and the innovation that it offered. And we can go more into that later. But we found the fabric, we had drawn the design, we found the pattern maker, and we had the blueprint. And so now from that blueprint, our pattern maker makes what's called a muslin, which is a sample of the piece, but not in its exact fabric, but a similar fabric. So that is how we start the fitting process. Luckily, Chelsea was our fit model, so that was very easy to have. So we fit the piece on her. We made adjustments based on how it fit, how it moved in the body, and different changes we wanted to make. And we worked really closely with her. I think we did like 3 fittings. And then from there, they make a sample in our actual fabric, just so we can kind of see what the drape is like in the material, if there's any further changes that need to be made. And then we knew we wanted to go into extended sizing as well. So we then made a separate pattern based on the specs of 2 fit models, one a 2X and one a 3, was it 1X and 3X? Yeah, sorry, 1X and 3X. And so we made another pattern, another sample, started the whole process over to fit the extended sizing as well. And so then once we've finalized the fit for both of those in the final material, everything's set, we bring it to what is our factory. Again, we were very lucky because we were approaching these factories in the height of pandemic. Nobody was really working. And so they were open to a brand new brand being like, can you make this for us? And they're like, we'll take any work.
Yeah. But before we get to the factory, we didn't even talk about the color process and the color matching, because these colors, we started with the one Allison's wearing, the lichen. That's not a color that you could just like order off the shelf. We knew that we wanted to specifically choose a color. And so we looked at Pantones online, which is like a designer no-no, because like the way color appears digitally is completely different than the way it appears on coated paper or cotton or, a lot of different areas. So we submitted what's called a lab dip. So you ask the factory to test your colors, and then they mail those back to you. And we submitted all these colors, and we threw in like an oddball. We're like, oh, let's just throw this one in. Who knows how it'll come back? Thank God we did, because that was lichen, because the rest of them came back absolutely bonkers. They were like so crazy. I'll never
like
forget.
neon and like
opening them
bright.
up. We were just like, oh my God, this is not okay. And so we luckily had lichen, and we were like, wait, this is beautiful. We called it lichen because it reminded us of all that green moss like lichen. I should actually get the definition of lichen down, but it's, if you hike anywhere in the on the East Coast, you'll see it all over the trees and the rocks and everything. But that's how we chose the color. And then from there, we decided that every single trim, so the buttons, the elastic that's on the cuff, the bungee that's in the hem, the stopper that stops the bungee and keeps it into place, the lining, we had to choose all the colors for those as well. And so just within the mid layer, there's like 5 or 6 additional pieces of material and components that go into the design. Whereas if you think of like a t-shirt, you really just have the tag on the back. There's not all these other bits. And so then we had to go and do the same lab dip process with the trims to make sure that the color matching was good enough and that it didn't look like completely whack. And then
also, once you mentioned the labels.
And the label, I know. And the labels, we had to get the woven labels made. I drove out to Long Island to pick them up to save us the shipping costs. Like, like all these things here and there. And once you have all the materials bulk in hand, then we went to the factory.
You can keep going.
Well, then we went to the factory, and the factory, we like do a sampling process with them as well. And so we do like a pre-production sample, and that's the sample that you make any and all of your last comments on. And the interesting thing about that we learned this all, is that the pre-production sample is done, and all the samples prior are done by a sample maker. So it's probably done by one person. So they are making the garment in its entirety from start to finish. They're probably not cutting the material. That's probably someone else, but 1 or 2 people are making it. And then when you go into production, after you get your pre-production sample, you get your top of line. And your top of production, exactly, excuse me, that goes through the production line. So then that's like a true version of what you're going to get through the production, because it's going down the line, like the, I Love Lucy kind of chocolate thing. It's exactly that. There's someone who cuts, there's people who only do a certain type of seaming, and they're only on one machine all day and they're putting it through. And so when you see your top of production, that's like your very last sample to approve before everything gets cut and everything goes through the line. And
were you guys freaking out when you had to approve that?
Oh, are you kidding? Like we measure things like a bajillion times. They change like things. That's the thing I've learned about design.
Tolerance.
There's tolerance. Things are changing. They're always like, it was one of the most frustrating things about design, which is that like you spend all this time working on this garment, and then it goes through, and like now it has a different tolerance than it did before, and you try your best to get it back to what it was. But there's just things, it's a very difficult process. It's not, these are people like making your clothes. They're sewing on your buttons. They're hand feeding the bungee through the hem. And so it's like a very delicate thing. But yeah, we were freaking out, like thinking back now of like everything and how like new it all was. And so there was no feeling of confidence ever, because we'd never done it. And now, like having done it, it's still hard, but at least we know the procedure. And then it goes into production. Exactly. Well, some of the questions asked, exactly. And while it's in production, we go and like check on things. Like we go and like measure and make sure everything's coming out right. Make sure things aren't. It's like a quality control, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we made it there. Yeah. And then I went with my car in multiple trips and picked them all up and then moved them into my apartment.
And now, what, 2 years later, you have an office/store/warehouse.
Yes. Now we have a one-stop shop, which we are so incredibly grateful for.
Yeah. Cool. It's like one of those things where if you don't know, you really have no idea all of the work that goes into producing
But like
something.
Chelsea said, neither one of us had done design before, and we just taught ourselves and asked a lot of questions. And I mean, obviously people always say this, but like if anybody could really do this, if you have an idea and you really feel passionate about it and you want to make it happen, like the process is learnable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And you can ask us and we'll tell you what we know.
Hell yeah. Right. So for all those designers out there.
Yeah.
So what's next for Hikerkind? What are you working on? What do you have up your sleeves?
We're taking the show on the road. That's what's going to happen. So this next year is going to be really fun and really exciting. The club and the brand really work well together because it's fun to get outside and hike with people and make new friends and want to like see our gear in action. And so what we're going to do is do a lot more hike clubs, possibly, definitely expanding out from New York and popping up some clubs in other cities, and giving people chances to try the gear on in person and not have to buy online. We're also working on a new colorway. And so that will be coming out. Yeah, that'll be coming out. Color story, sorry. Yeah, we just learned that the other day. We've been calling it colorways this whole time. Not right. It's a color story or a color palette. Colorway is one specific color. See, now we know. We learn every day. Honestly, we were like, anyway. What else are we working on? Really, we're just trying.
We have a new piece coming out.
Yeah, we have a new piece coming out. I totally forgot about her. She's going into production soon, very soon. And she'll be ready for spring, for May. Yeah, we've got some new gear coming out, some new colors, a lot more opportunities for people to gather and meet and get outside. And yeah, that's kind of like the very, very near future. And what we have coming, down the line is global domination, obviously.
But also to speak like about the design process, like it all happens really a long time in advance. So we're already designing and have started designing for 2024 and 2025.
Yeah.
So those are also what's coming down the line.
We can't talk about it. Sorry.
Top secret.
That's amazing. So cool. Thank you guys so much for sharing with everyone tonight. I don't know, is there anything I didn't ask you that you're like, Sarah, this is very important?
I didn't even think.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we've definitely covered a lot of what the essence of Hikerkind is and how we got to where we are right now.
I think so. And where you're going, which is on the road to global.
We're going on the road.
Yeah.
Before global domination.
Before global domination. Perfect. Sweet. So yeah, if you're in New York and watching this, you can join the Hiker Club, which is starting in May, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then for the people who are not in New York City, they can head over to the Instagram and the website kind of thing and follow.
Yeah, follow
and
us.
Also, we might be coming to your city.
Yeah, and also let us know if you're like, hey, we need you out here, and here's a cool shop that I think you would fit well in, or anything. Let us know what you're looking for. If there's like a specific piece of clothing that you're dying to wear and you are like, I can't find this because of X, Y, and Z, let us know. Yeah, let us know if there's something you don't know about hiking or business or anything and you want info on. We're just, we're still learning, clearly, but also just happy to chat.
Awesome. Thank you guys for all you're doing and sharing and building. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we're going to say goodbye to y'all. Thanks to all who tuned in. And we'll be doing another Maker series next month with this guy, Isaac, who's based in DC. and makes these really cool canvas like fanny pack sling bags. So stay tuned for that and have a good night.
And thanks, Sierra Nevada.
And thanks, Sierra
Yes.
Nevada. Yes.
We love you.
We love you. Thank you.